3:12 a.m., August 27, 2025. The night sky rumbled as swarms of Ukrainian drones and British-made Storm Shadow missiles sliced across the darkness. Fuel depots erupted into fireballs, radar sites collapsed in silence, and entire air defense systems were ripped apart in minutes. On the ground, Leopard 2 tanks pushed forward like steel beasts, their cannons shaking the valley. Challenger 2 crews fired with mechanical precision, reducing Russian artillery to rubble. For the first time in the war, Russia's war machine wasn't advancing, it was burning. This wasn't just a strike, it was a warning, a message written in steel and fire, and it was aimed straight at Moscow. What happened next wasn't only a battle, it was a carefully orchestrated annihilation, a kill box designed to show the Kremlin that no place, not even their own soil, was safe. This is the untold story of how Ukraine, with NATO intelligence and modern warfare, turned the unthinkable into reality. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear isn't just history, it's a preview of the wars to come. Weeks earlier, Russia believed it was tightening the noose around Ukraine. Satellite images revealed long convoys of armored vehicles amassing near Belgorod and Bryansk. Ammunition depots swelled with rockets. Radar stations lit up like stars, signaling preparations for a major offensive. But in Kiev, a different story was unfolding. Ukrainian intelligence, backed by NATO surveillance, tracked every movement. American satellites mapped convoys down to individual trucks. British E-3 sentry planes eavesdropped on encrypted chatter. Cyber units wormed into Russian networks, pulling real-time data from supposedly secure systems. What Moscow didn't realize was that its every step was being shadowed. Every route, every supply hub, every command post, already marked for destruction. Ukraine wasn't preparing to defend. It was preparing to strike. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the first wave lifted off. Ukrainian drones rose silently into the night, some cheap decoys designed to overload Russian radars, others loaded with explosives strong enough to rip through bunkers. High above, NATO satellites locked targets in sequence. Operators in underground bunkers in Kyiv whispered into headsets, "Target 1, painted. Target 2, painted." Then came the missiles. Storm shadows launched low, hugging the terrain, weaving beneath radar coverage. Russian crews scrambled to respond, but their screens blinked with confusion. Decoys flooded their systems, and by the time real threats appeared, it was too late. The first explosion shattered a radar dome outside Bryansk, plunging an entire sector into blindness. Seconds later, a fuel depot detonated, flames shooting hundreds of feet into the air. Ammunition inside cooked off, turning the night into a chain of rolling thunderclaps. In Moscow's command bunkers, alarms screamed. But what they saw on their screens wasn't a defense plan, it was collapse. The skies above Russia burned, but on the ground, the real storm was only beginning. As the fireballs from destroyed depots lit up the night, Ukrainian armored columns surged forward. Leopard 2 A6 tanks, the most advanced in Europe, growled across muddy roads, their treads grinding steel into earth. Behind them, Challenger 2s moved in formation, their smoothbore cannons primed for precision. Each tank crew was calm, disciplined. They weren't driving into chaos. They were following a script written weeks earlier. The enemy thought they were safe behind defenses. They weren't. Within minutes, the Leopards locked onto their first targets. Russian armored personnel carriers clustered in a tree line. The order came cold. Fire. The first shell split the night. The impact tore through the lead vehicle, flipping it like a child's toy. Seconds later, Challenger guns followed, their explosive rounds scattering Russian soldiers scrambling for cover. The valley shook with thunder. Every strike was precise, every round deliberate. This wasn't random destruction, it was surgical dismantling. But Russia was not silent. Within moments, artillery units hidden deeper in the countryside roared awake. Grad rocket launchers unleashed salvos, filling the sky with streaks of light. The missiles rained down, smashing into Ukrainian forward positions, throwing dirt and fire into the air. Helicopters thundered into the battlefield, their rotors slicing through smoke as they launched volleys of rockets. Mi-24 Hind swept low, trying to hammer advancing tanks before they reached fortified lines. For a few tense minutes, the night became chaos. Explosions lit the horizon, tracer rounds stitched across the darkness, and the battlefield glowed red like a furnace. But Ukraine had prepared for this exact moment. HIMARS rocket systems, hidden in forests miles away, came alive. Guided by NATO reconnaissance, they fired precision rounds that streaked across the night sky. One after another, Russian artillery positions vanished in blossoms of fire. Patriot air defense systems, brought forward in secret, locked onto Russian helicopters. Streaks of light soared upward, then slammed into the targets. One Hind exploded mid-air, spinning into the earth like a comet. Another tried to retreat, but was torn apart before it could escape. Above, Reaper drones hovered silently. Operators sitting thousands of miles away fired Hellfire missiles into Russian command trucks, wiping out officers who thought they were directing the fight. The Russian counterstrike collapsed in minutes. By now, the valley had become a trap. Russian convoys moving in to reinforce their comrades were already being tracked. Delta-like Ukrainian special forces, positioned on ridges, marked vehicles with laser designators invisible to the eye. Missiles followed the light like predators. Trucks erupted into fireballs. Tanks detonated one by one. Panic spread through Russian lines. Survivors abandoned their vehicles, trying to flee into the forests. But the killbox had no exits. Claymores and mines hidden in likely escape routes tore through groups of retreating soldiers. Snipers picked off stragglers with chilling precision. What Russia thought was a defensive shield had become a slaughterhouse. While the land burned, another front was about to erupt. Hundreds of miles away, in the cold waters of the Black Sea, the Russian fleet waited. Destroyers, corvettes, and missile cruisers, their decks bristling with Caliber cruise missiles. For months, these ships had rained destruction on Ukrainian cities. Odessa, Mykolaiv, and even Kyiv had all felt their fury. But tonight, the hunters became prey. Silent and invisible, Ukrainian naval drones skimmed across the waves. They looked like shadows. Low profile, nearly impossible to detect on radar. Guided by satellite, they sped straight toward the Russian warships. On board the Admiral Essen frigate, alarms blared too late. The first drone struck with devastating force, ripping a jagged hole in the hull. Water surged in, compartments flooded, and within minutes, the ship listed, its crew scrambling in panic. Before reinforcements could react, a second naval drone slammed into a nearby patrol vessel. Fire erupted across the deck, igniting ammunition stores. The explosion lit up the night like a rising sun. The shockwave felt for miles. Ukraine's message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Not the valleys, not the skies, not even the sea. But the Black Sea was not done. Russian commanders, furious at the ambush, retaliated with a barrage of Caliber cruise missiles. Dozens streaked toward Ukrainian coastal defenses, leaving fiery trails in the sky. For a moment, it looked like Ukraine's lifeline to the sea would be crushed. Then came the counter. From hidden silos along the coast, American-supplied Harpoon missiles launched. Sleek, fast, and deadly, they sliced through the night toward the Russian fleet. Two ships maneuvered frantically, trying to evade. But one missile found its mark, exploding into the stern of a corvette. Flames consumed the vessel as it sank beneath the waves. The naval balance in the Black Sea shifted in a single night. In Moscow, the Kremlin watched the live satellite feed. Senior officers stared at the screens in disbelief. Warships sinking, armored convoys annihilated, air defenses shredded. One general slammed his fist on the table. Impossible! This is impossible! But it was happening. And the fear wasn't just in Moscow. Across Russian units dug in along the front, panic spread. Soldiers whispered that Ukraine had eyes everywhere, that no movement went unseen, that any convoy, any ship, any aircraft could be destroyed before it even reached the battlefield. The myth of Russian invincibility was collapsing, and still, the operation wasn't over. As dawn crept over the Black Sea, Ukraine revealed its final move. From secret airstrips, Storm Shadow missiles thundered into the sky, their stealth profiles evading detection. Each missile carried a payload designed not just for destruction, but humiliation. Their targets? Russian command bunkers buried deep within occupied territory. One after another, explosions ripped through fortified positions. Communications blacked out. Commanders killed. Networks severed. What began as a convoy ambush in the valleys had expanded into a full-spectrum strike. Land, sea, and air all engulfed in coordinated destruction. Ukraine had not just fought back. It had rewritten the rules of the battlefield. By sunrise, the battlefield was unrecognizable. The valleys of Donbass, once filled with the thunder of Russian convoys, were now graveyards of steel. Columns of black smoke rose like funeral pyres, visible for miles. Burned-out tanks sat abandoned in the mud, their crews either dead or fled. Drones still circled overhead, not attacking now, but watching, recording every shattered vehicle, every broken formation. These images would be broadcast worldwide before the day was over. Ukraine hadn't just stopped the offensive, it had turned it into a lesson. Western analysts who once doubted Ukraine's ability to resist were now astonished. What they saw was a military operation as sophisticated as anything NATO itself might conduct. Small drones, costing only thousands of dollars, had destroyed tanks worth millions. Naval drones, built in secret workshops, had crippled warships that took decades to construct. Precision airstrikes had wiped out command centers hidden deep underground. It was asymmetric warfare at its sharpest. Technology, intelligence, and coordination defeating brute force. A Pentagon official reportedly said, "This isn't just Ukraine fighting for survival. This is Ukraine teaching the world how modern wars will be fought." In Russia, the shock was immediate. State media struggled to spin the disaster, calling it a temporary setback. But leaked videos told the truth. Demoralized soldiers retreating, burning vehicles, officers screaming into broken radios. For the first time since the invasion began, whispers of mutiny spread. Soldiers posted on social media, "We are being sent to slaughter." They see us before we even move. The Kremlin feared not just defeat at the front, but rebellion at home. And in Ukraine, amid the wreckage, there was relief. Soldiers embraced each other, exhausted but triumphant. Villagers hidden in cellars emerged to see the once invincible Russian army shattered. For them, it wasn't just a military victory, it was survival. Families who had lived under constant shelling finally breathed a little easier. Children played outside again, if only for a moment, in villages that had been on the edge of annihilation just hours before. The operation carried a message beyond the battlefield. To allies, it showed that their support was not wasted, that weapons, intelligence, and aid were fueling real victories. To enemies, it was a warning. Wars were no longer won by numbers alone. One drone could tip the balance. One missile could cripple a fleet. One night of planning could undo months of preparation. Ukraine had proven that in modern war, agility and innovation outweighed brute strength. As dawn spread over the smoldering valleys, a Ukrainian commander stood on a ridge, binoculars raised. Below him, wrecked convoys lay scattered like broken toys. He lowered the binoculars and simply said, "This is what happens when they underestimate us." Cameras captured that moment. Within hours, the image spread across the globe, a defiant symbol of resistance, resilience, and rebirth. The war was far from over. But this night, Ukraine had turned the tide, and the world would remember it as the night when the hunter became the hunted.